1,800 people. That is how many individuals get up in the morning and go to work for Meta in Ireland, in Dublin, in County Meath, in Cork. And on the 23rd of April 2026, a memo went out from Meta's chief people officer, a person named Janelle Gale, confirming that 8,000 of their colleagues around the world would not be doing that for much longer. The Irish government found out from the news. That last sentence is worth sitting with for a moment. The company that operates its European headquarters on Irish soil, that paid €366 million in corporation tax to the Irish Exchequer in 2024, that generated €2.9 billion in profits through its Irish subsidiary that same year. That company told its staff before it told the state. Not because it forgot, because it is not required to. Here is the part nobody is talking about. The Irish state does not know how many of those 8,000 jobs are in Ireland. As of this morning, Meta has not filed formal notice with the Department of Enterprise. The 20-day notification window under the Protection of Employment Act does not even start until that filing happens, which means that legally, entirely legally, Irish workers can be the last people in the country to know their fate. Before we go any further, quick check-in. Drop the county or city you are watching from into the comments and let me know how much time you have. Are you on a 15-minute break, or have you got the full run? I am genuinely curious about where this lands geographically, because this story is going to feel very different depending on whether you are in Dublin 4 or in Cork City. Because this is not one company having a bad quarter. The brief is important here. This is a pattern, and the pattern is accelerating. The Taoiseach, Simon Harris, described the situation as an anxious and stressful time for Meta workers. The Minister for Enterprise, Peter Burke, confirmed that he is engaging with Meta through the Industrial Development Authority. The Communications Workers Union, which represents members inside Meta's Irish workforce and inside the contracted firms that form its Irish digital supply chain, described itself as alarmed. The union's organizer, John Bowen, put it in language that does not leave much room for ambiguity. We are seeing living, breathing workers disposed of to offset a balance sheet of mind-boggling artificial intelligence spending. That phrase, mind-boggling artificial intelligence spending, is the mechanism we need to understand. Because this redundancy announcement is not what it appears to be at the surface. Meta is not cutting jobs because the business is struggling. €2.9 billion in profits through the Irish subsidiary alone in 2024. That is not a company in distress. That is a company that is profitable and cutting anyway. Is in the memo itself. Meta's chief executive Mark Zuckerberg said in January of this year that 2026 would be the year that artificial intelligence begins to dramatically change how the company works. His specific framing? Flattening teams. His specific claim? Projects that used to require big teams can now be accomplished by a single, very talented person. And the number behind that claim? $135 billion. That is Meta's planned capital expenditure on artificial intelligence infrastructure in 2026 alone. To put that in context, that is roughly equivalent to Meta's combined artificial intelligence spending over the previous 3 years, compressed into 12 months. The chess pieces are being moved. The question is, who decides where the Irish ones end up? Here is the structural reality of what Ireland has built over the past 3 decades. The foreign direct investment model. The model that brought Google, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, and hundreds of others to Irish soil was predicated on a specific bargain. Low corporation tax, a well-educated English-speaking workforce, access to the European Union's single market, and in exchange, multinationals would bring jobs, pay wages into the Irish economy, contribute to the exchequer, and anchor themselves here in a way that was mutually beneficial. That bargain is being renegotiated. Not at a table in Dublin, in a memo drafted in Menlo Park, California. Meta's Irish headcount has fallen 40% since its post-COVID peak of 3,000 employees to 1,800 today. That did not happen in one announcement. It happened in layers. 350 jobs in November 2022, 500 in May 2023. Performance-related cuts in January 2025. 15 jobs in March 2026 linked specifically to artificial intelligence adoption inside the Irish operation. And now this, 8,000 globally, up to 180 in Ireland, if the 10% rate applies locally. That is, technically, a lot of disruption for one workforce to absorb in 4 years. None of that, however, is the real issue. Everything we have just covered, the headcount reduction, the artificial intelligence memo, the union alarm, the government's politely expressed concern, that is only the surface. The real story starts one level down, in the structure of how Ireland's economy is actually wired. Let us follow the money on this one. Meta Platforms Ireland Limited, the key Irish subsidiary, carried a payroll cost of €454 million in 2024. That includes €257 million in wages and salaries. Every person on that payroll is paying income tax and pay-as-you-earn contributions and pay-related social insurance into the Irish Exchequer. That is money that funds the Health Service Executive. That funds the Department of Housing. That funds infrastructure. The corporation tax figure of €366 million gets the attention. The income tax and social contributions from 1,800 well-paid tech workers, those figures are quieter, but they are not small. Now imagine that number shrinks by 10%, or 20%, or more across multiple companies simultaneously. Because Meta is not operating in isolation. Oracle has disclosed plans to cut between 20,000 and 30,000 employees globally as it accelerates its own artificial intelligence infrastructure investment. Snap announced in mid-April 2026 that it would eliminate 1,000 positions, again, citing artificial intelligence tools allowing the same work to be done by fewer people. Microsoft offered voluntary retirement to thousands of employees on the same day Meta confirmed its own cuts. Each of these companies has a presence in Ireland. The chess pieces are not being moved one at a time. They are being moved simultaneously. And the board is Irish. If this kind of structural breakdown is what has been missing from your analysis of Irish economic news, you know where to find more of it. Now, back to the numbers. Here is what an actual civil servant looking at this file would see. Ireland's corporation tax receipts are substantial. A significant and, by most fiscal analysis, outsized share of them flows from foreign direct investment by United States multinationals. Fiscal analysts and the Department of Finance have flagged for years that this concentration is a vulnerability. Their language has been careful and technical. The underlying message has been consistent. The Irish state is dependent on a revenue stream that it does not control and cannot compel. The mechanism that allows this is also the mechanism that creates the problem. Ireland's 12.5% corporation tax rate, what the glossy brochures call a competitive advantage, is the core of the bargain. It attracts the companies. It generates the revenue. It also means that the companies that generate that revenue have significant leverage over the state that depends on them, which is, technically, the policy, which is, technically, the problem. The pain here is worth working through carefully. A 10% global reduction in Meta's workforce, if applied proportionally to Ireland, removes up to 180 direct jobs, €454 million in payroll costs, and the associated tax yield from those positions, simultaneously. That is one company, in one announcement, with formal government notification not yet even filed, and there is no automatic policy response. The Industrial Development Authority engages, the minister monitors, and the workers wait for the 20th of May. That is the date when the layoffs are scheduled to take effect. 2026, 24 days from now. But all of that is still abstract. Here is what it actually means for the households and the communities that are standing on this particular square of the board right now. In Dublin, in County Meath, in Cork, there are 1,800 people whose futures are currently sitting in a memo they have read attached to a notification the Irish government has not. That is not a metaphor. That is the sequence. Staff knew on the 23rd of April. The Department of Enterprise had not received formal notification as of the 26th. The Protection of Employment Act requires that notification. But it only requires it before implementation, not before disclosure to staff. The gap between those two events is where Irish workers currently live. Here is the broader consequence that the immediate headline does not capture. Ireland is 66 days away from assuming the presidency of the Council of the European Union. On the 1st of July 2026, Irish ministers and officials will chair negotiations on some of the most consequential European legislation of this decade, including the Digital Omnibus, a package that critics describe as a partial rollback of the past decade's digital regulation, including elements of the General Data Protection Regulation. Those negotiations, the ones that determine how big tech companies are regulated across 450 million European citizens, will fall substantially within Ireland's term. Ireland will be the honest broker. That is the official framing. But Ireland will be the honest broker for a nearly €2 trillion multi-annual budget negotiation, while simultaneously depending on the corporation tax revenue of the companies its presidency is supposed to regulate impartially. The Taoiseach said at the Cyprus summit that Ireland is very strongly opposed to any proposal that corporation tax should be used as a mechanism to raise resources for the joint European Union budget. That is a coherent policy position for a country that built its economic model on a 12.5% rate. It is also a position that aligns exactly with what the companies being regulated would prefer. None of that is illegal. None of it is hidden. The Taoiseach stated it openly, in Cyprus, in front of his European counterparts. The system worked exactly as designed. That is precisely the point worth sitting with. 27 seats at that table. One of them is Ireland's. And for 6 months, starting in 66 days, Ireland will hold the gavel that decides when the conversation moves forward and when it pauses. The question being asked in Brussels, and being asked quietly in Dublin, is whether a country that relies structurally on the goodwill and tax compliance of big tech multinationals can chair a process that might constrain them. There is no clean answer to that question. There is only the architecture of the position Ireland has put itself in. What to watch in the coming days is specific. Whether Meta files formal notification with the Department of Enterprise before the 20th of May, and whether that notification confirms the Irish figure. Whether the government announces any policy response beyond the Industrial Development Authority engagement already underway, and whether the parallel redundancy waves at Oracle, Snap, and others generate any coordinated Irish policy conversation, or whether each announcement is handled in isolation, as if it were a single weather event rather than a climate. The 20th of May is 24 days away. The Irish European Union presidency starts in 66. The chess pieces are already moving. The people sitting on the affected squares in Dublin and Cork and County Meath did not move them. They are waiting to find out where they land.